This is not about freedom or personal choice. It's about protecting yourself and those around you, the people you work with, the people you care about, the people you love. My job as president is to protect all Americans. So tonight, I'm announcing that the Department of Labor is developing an emergency rule to require all employers with 100 or more employees that together employ over 80 million workers to ensure their workforces are fully vaccinated or show a negative test at least once a week.
Allow me to quote the founders of the United States of America. These are the men who determined what the nation is that you took a solemn oath and swore to preserve, protect, and defend. Mr. Biden. Give me liberty or give me death. Patrick Henry. Give me liberty or give me death. Because liberty is the most fundamental right and necessity to enjoy a life that is worth living. In the Declaration of Independence, written by Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States, he listed out many offenses, serious offenses, by King George III. These are the reasons why the United States separated from England. I'll just give you 3 of them. For taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our government. You, Mr. Biden, throughout your 40-year history of not working for a living, but being in, quote, public service, have consistently undermined and subverted state laws and the U.S. Constitution, and you have done so more aggressively than any foreign adversary that I have seen in my lifetime or that I can perceive in history. You, personally, have done more to undermine and subvert laws and the Constitution than the Soviet Union accomplished, because you had the power to do so. But you had the power coming with responsibility to not do so. That was your choice. Number 2, he has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. You have consistently refused to condemn aggressively the riots of 2020, which began in this wonderful state of Minnesota, whose government is so corrupt that they have me living in a car. You have refused to condemn those riots and looting and violence and murder. This is tantamount to tacit approval for that behavior, the behavior which destroyed the lives of our people. Just like King George. Number 3, he has excited domestic insurrection among us. In your speech, you pitted vaccinated Americans against unvaccinated Americans. You fomented fear and hatred between Americans. You took a unified country, a melting pot that is more unified than many nations that are descended from the same race. You took that unified nation and you did everything in your power to separate them into 2 groups that will hate and fear and fight against each other. And yet you call them their leader, and you keep opening and closing your mouth to speak the word unity. Jefferson continues, in every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people? Or have you been seeking to be the ruler of people who are not free all along? You yourself said it in your speech. This is not about freedom or personal choice. In your speech, you said it is your job as president to protect Americans. If you believe that you are the president of the United States, then it is your job to protect Americans' rights and liberties granted to them by the U.S. Constitution. That is the oath that you took when you took office. Your oath of office was to, quote, faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. End quote. You did not take an oath to protect, preserve, protect, and defend me personally. Certainly not against a natural occurrence like a volcano or a virus. You took an oath to defend, preserve, protect, and defend the U.S. Constitution. That is the oath that you swore. Mr. Biden, you are not my father. You are not my caretaker. You most certainly are not my God. You are just another random Yahoo out of 8 billion people in this world. And in this world, I have a job to do. You have a job to do. But through it all, you and I are equal. And you and all of these other 8 billion people on this planet are equal. The founders of the United States of America acknowledged this. All men are created equal. Because of that, you have no right to force me to do anything that I don't want to do against my will. You do not have that right. And if you don't have that right, then you don't have that power either. And if you attempt to usurp that power, then you are betraying your office and you are betraying the American people. I have no right to force you to do anything against your will either. But I'm not trying to, am I? You're the one who's trying to force other people against their will. You are attempting to force, against their will, 100 million Americans who you claim to protect to get a vaccine that itself claims to protect these people from a virus that already has more than a 99% survival rate in the first place. Under your dictate, those who refuse to take this action that they don't want to take will lose their jobs, which is to lose their means of survival, which is to put their very survival at imminent risk. And yet, you claim to be protecting these people from a virus that has more than a 99% survival rate. Mr. Biden, if you claim to be the President of the United States, it is your job to protect Americans from all enemies, both foreign and domestic. In other words, it is your job to protect them from any human enemy that would seek to take away their freedom, their rights, their liberty, their Constitution. It is your job to protect the integrity of this nation's founding principles and its Constitution. You did not take an oath of office to, quote, change, modify, undermine, subvert, ignore, disrespect, and mock the U.S. Constitution. That is not the oath that you took, but that is the behavior that you are demonstrating. You took an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. And you have failed. If you do not like our founding principles of this nation, if you don't like our Constitution, then the United States of America provides a remedy for you. That remedy is called freedom. You have the freedom to leave this country and to go somewhere else that has a government that operates on ideals that are more aligned with your own. You have every right and freedom to do so. For example, it is my understanding that Communist China would welcome you and your son Hunter with open arms. Now, of course, in China, those people do not have freedom. So if they want to leave their country to go find a better place to live, they can't. And if they do, then the Chinese government will take their family out of their homes and shoot them in the head, as an example to others. But if that's what you want, if you want that kind of government that forces other people against their will, you have the freedom to move to Communist China or Venezuela or wherever you want to go. You had the freedom all along. It is your job to protect my freedom, my rights as a citizen, my liberty, and my Constitution. It is your job to protect our Constitution. That Constitution grants all American citizens that same freedom and those same rights and liberties because we are all created equal. My question to you, Mr. Biden, is why does this homeless man know that and you don't? I question your competence, Mr. Biden. I question your intelligence. And the truth is, I question whether you are truly conscious and coherent.
Friendship between our two nations, the United States of America and the Jewish and democratic state of Israel, both of us who seek to do good and need to be strong.
Is this attempt at a vaccine mandate just a distraction from your devastating failure in Afghanistan, where you epically failed to protect not just all the Americans over there, but everybody, the whole world, from this brutal, ruthless terrorist organization that attacked us 20 years ago today, September 11th? You failed, Mr. Biden. Is this vaccine mandate just meant to stir up some kind of a hornet's nest that will distract people from your epic failure in Afghanistan? One of the biggest government leader foreign policy failures in all of human history. In one day, you gave $83 billion worth of weapons to one of the most violent terrorist organizations the world has ever known. And you have upset, probably for the next 200 years, of people's safety and security throughout this planet. You did that all by yourself. And what happened to my body, my choice, Mr. Biden? My body, my choice. When it comes to murdering a baby, a woman goes out and has sex and she gets pregnant. And because of her actions, a brand new human being is formed in her belly. You're all in favor of murdering that helpless American citizen, the most helpless American citizen of all. You're in favor of murdering that child because it's her body, it's her choice. And yet, when it comes to us saying, I don't want to have a vaccine, for example, in my case, I stopped not only getting vaccines 30 years ago, I stopped going to doctors 30 years ago. And what do you know? I haven't been sick in 30 years, even though I got sick all the time before that. I wonder if there's a connection. When I had my choice over the last 30 years, I have been healthy, while my co-workers and people around me are dropping like flies every time there's a threat out there. You are aggressively going after the state of Texas for restricting abortion. They are doing the right thing. They are trying to protect the most helpless American citizens, the ones in their mother's belly. You're trying to stop that. You're trying to guarantee their so-called right to the deliberate murder of these human beings. And yet, the 10th Amendment to the Constitution that you swore to preserve, protect, and defend clearly says that Texas has every right and every responsibility to pass that law. 10th Amendment is very short, sir. It's one sentence. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. The federal government has nothing to say about it. Why don't you know this? Why don't you know this? I repeat from the Declaration of Independence, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments. You and King George III seem to have a lot in common, Mr. Biden. King George III was a tyrant. You say it is your job as president to protect Americans. Then, is it your job to protect them from tyranny, to protect them from the loss of their rights, and to protect them from the loss of liberty? It's a yes or no question, Mr. Biden. Is that your job? I can't hear you. Is it your job as president to protect Americans from an out-of-control government that is causing citizens to lose their jobs, their incomes, and their very means of survival? Is that your job to protect them from that, sir? Still not hearing you. Is it your job to protect Americans from a government that would make them destitute and homeless, as the Minnesota state government made me destitute and homeless? Is that your job to protect those Americans, since you claim it's your job to protect them? Is it, sir? Is that your job? Because if it is, in fact, your job to protect Americans from an out-of-control government that is hurting American citizens, then, by definition, it is your job to protect American citizens from you. That's your job. That's your responsibility. That is your moral and legal obligation, to protect 350 million Americans from you. Are you going to do that job, Mr. Biden? Or must 350 million Americans be sacrificed to preserve, protect, and defend your feeble ego? Mr. Biden, I encourage you to resign from office immediately. Go live out the rest of your days stroking your own ego. I don't have time to stroke your ego. Neither do 350 million other Americans. We do not live to serve you. You chose to serve us. And in that capacity, you are a failure. Let's hear what the first president of the United States of America had to say about this. Let's hear what George Washington had to say in his farewell address. In a farewell address after a lifetime of public service, you would expect that the person is going to focus on the things that they think are the most important topics that they need to talk about. So let's see what George Washington had to say in his farewell address to the nation. Interwoven as is the love of liberty with every ligament of your hearts, no recommendation of mine is necessary to fortify or confirm the attachment. End quote. Do you understand what that statement says, Mr. Biden? Or do you need an interpreter? The love of liberty is so built into the being of what an American is. It is so fundamental at below the cellular level. It is such a fundamental aspect of what Americans are that makes them different than the rest of the world, that made America better, made America greater than every other nation. That George Washington is saying, I don't even need to tell you that. I don't even need to talk about it. But what he did talk about was this, quote, "The unity of government which constitutes you, one people, is also now dear to you. It is justly so, for it is a main pillar in the edifice of your real independence, the support of your tranquility at home, your peace abroad, of your safety, of your prosperity, of that very liberty which you so highly prize. But as it is easy to foresee that from different causes and from different quarters, much pains will be taken, many artifices employed to weaken in your minds the conviction of this truth, as this is the point in your political fortress against which the batteries of internal and external enemies will be most constantly and actively, though often covertly and insidiously, directed. It is of infinite moment that you should properly estimate the immense value of your national union to your collective and individual happiness, that you should cherish a cordial, habitual, and immovable attachment to it, accustoming yourselves to think and speak of it as of the palladium of your political safety and prosperity, watching for its preservation with jealous anxiety, discountenancing whatever may suggest even a suspicion that it can in any event be abandoned, and indignantly frowning upon the first dawning of every attempt to alienate any portion of our country from the rest, or to enfeeble the sacred ties which now link together the various parts." End quote. Mr. Biden, did you understand a word that I just read from George Washington? In his farewell address to the nation, two things he focused on. One was to watch out for everybody who will come up with false pretenses, artifices. They will manufacture fear. They will manufacture stories, fables that pretend to create a pretense for us to give up our essential liberties to get a little bit of safety. George Washington warned us about you. The second thing he warns about is anybody who would attempt to divide one American against another, to pit one American against another, just like you did in your speech, where you took Americans and you called them vaccinated and unvaccinated, and you tried to get them to go to war against each other. You tried to make the people over here hate and fear this group. Just like the CDC did with anti-smoking. You have American citizens who build the greatest nation in the world, but when the people who hate smoking wanted to end it, what did they do? They took these American people, they separated them, they called them smokers, they called them non-smokers, and they taught and indoctrinated this group to hate and to fear this group. A division in our society which has been incredibly devastating over the last 50 years. You are exactly what George Washington warned us against. President George Washington, the founder of our country, in his farewell address to the nation, he said that the most important things of all are to protect Americans against any pretense that would manufacture division and conflict between us, and against any pretense whatsoever that would suggest that we need to give up even the smallest of our liberties. And that's exactly what you have done. You have betrayed your oath of office. You have betrayed the American people. You've betrayed the human species, Mr. Biden, where everyone is equal. You've betrayed the natural order of a world where all men are created equal, where no one individual can stand up and force against their will millions of other human beings to do something that they believe is wrong. They believe it is morally wrong, that it is scientifically wrong, that it may be dangerous, that it's counterproductive, or outright stupid, or, frankly, if they just don't want to do it. But you are standing up and claiming some kind of right to force millions of other people to do what they don't want to do. That opposes the founding principles of the United States of America. I don't even have the words to express how much that opposes. It is a fundamental opposition to what this nation is. You are a traitor to the United States of America. If what we have seen from you in only 8 months is, quote, from your oath, the best of my ability, if this is the best of your ability, then you have only demonstrated over and over and over again that you are not in any way, shape, or form qualified to hold the office of president. Let me leave you with a children's cartoon. Perhaps this, Mr. Biden, perhaps this simple statement of a simple concept will finally get through whatever is hiding behind your skull, and you'll be able to comprehend the obvious like even a small child can.
When anybody preaches disunity, tries to pit one of us against the other through class warfare, race hatred, or religious intolerance, you know that person seeks to rob us of our freedom and destroy our very lives. And we know what to do about it.